back, listeners, to the Mindful Journey, where we explore the raw, real, and sometimes messy paths that lead us toward growth and authenticity. I'm your host, as always, and listeners, today in this episode, we are diving deep into a topic that resonates with so many of us. How mindfulness can transform pain into purpose. And to help me with the conversation, our guest, John Taylor McEntire, has lived this journey firsthand. As the founder and chief empowerment officer of Mutual Prosperity, John has built a career empowering individuals and organizations across globe to thrive. And from growing up in a uniquely diverse household, surrounded by foster siblings, exchange students, and refugees, to becoming an innovation ecosystem enabler, working with Hollywood producers and global manufacturers. Listeners, John's story is as wide reaching as it is deeply personal. And also, he's the co author of The Keys to Authenticity with Jack Canfield, and he's preparing to release his next book, SYNC, to the Beat of Success. And today, he's here to share how mindfulness became his pathway from being a trauma survivor to stepping into authentic leadership. So, to me, listeners, and I hope the same for all of you, this conversation is going to be about resilience, connection, and the daily practice of showing up for yourself and for others as well. So, John, welcome to the show. And I'm really, really honored to have you here with us.
Well, I'm really honored to be on your show. You've had such a lovely um, program, and watching the different podcasts, it's just been so much to learn and so much to um, uh, to soak in.
Thank you. Thank you so much, John, for your kind and encouraging words. And I mean, this is such a beautiful acknowledgement that you share with all of us that coming from a background filled with challenges and trauma, still you have found your way through resilience, through grit, and through just being true to yourself, just showing up for yourself and for others. So, if you can take us back to that moment you realized mindfulness was just more than a channel for coping. It's a foundational um, element for your life and leadership.
Great. I think I need to step back just a little bit and tell about what I've done for 35 years. It was really working for others, whether it was for uh, different um, celebrities and such. If it was for, I worked for the University of Illinois for 12 and a half years for the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, which is a the United States Department of uh, Energy National Laboratory in
Yeah.
Richland, Washington. And then I worked for the Qatar Foundation in Doha, Qatar. I
Okay.
worked for them for 10 years. And what I found was that um, I'm a I grew up as a people pleaser and
Mhm.
a perfectionist, and
Mhm.
um, I it didn't really mean much to me. It's just how I was. And as I was working for others, it was very easy for me to climb up the corporate ladder because once I knew what the people above me, my boss's boss, if I knew what they needed, then I I was very good at getting what they needed for them. And
Right.
but I was not necessarily very happy myself. Um,
Mhm.
I had these accolades and was, climbing the ladder and seeming to have all this success and everything. But
Mhm.
when I had been in Doha for about 7.5 years, I was
Mhm.
realizing that my time there needed to be um, cut at some point. My wife had promised me 5 years, and here we were 2.5 years past that. And
Okay.
And she had already moved back to the US with our youngest daughter. We have 6 children, and our youngest daughter was, in school in Doha for several years, and she decided that she wanted to finish, high school in the United
Mhm.
States. And it just so happened that, in Washington State, the students, if they pass certain tests, they're able to
Mhm.
do half of their classes in college while
Mm.
they do the other classes in high school. But um, they get high school and college credit for all of this. So the last 2 years, they're really working on their associate's degree. So it was a really good thing for my daughter. So as I was in Doha by myself, and I was trying to figure out what do I do next, I got this impression that that I should write a book. And I'd had this impression several times before throughout my life, and I thought, well, I'm just really going to do this. And I kind of looked into this, and I found this book writing group, and it just so happened that Jack Canfield was one of the coaches in this book writing group, and
Mhm.
so he became a coach and a mentor. And what was interesting was that my name is John Taylor McEntire, and I used my middle name because there's another John McEntire who happens to be
Mm.
a drummer from Chicago. And so
Oh.
to keep us separated, I put in my middle name uh, just to be different so that social media would
Mhm.
be unique. Well,
Mhm.
the first meeting with Jack, which this was during COVID time, so of course it was a Zoom meeting, but I was in Doha and he was in California, and there's hundreds of people in this class, and he just looks over the audience, and all of a sudden he
Mhm.
says, "John Taylor McEntire." He goes, "We're the same," and I said, "What do you mean?" And he says,
Mhm.
"Well, I was born John Taylor Canfield," and so. Um,
Oh. Oh.
through his own upbringing and everything, he gained the nickname Jack from his aunt, who supported him through military school and these other things, which built Jack to who he is. And so from that point on, I was like glued to him, and so we ended up doing the book writing class, and I
Mhm.
was because of my background with Japanese and Asian studies from the university and doing business in Japan. I wanted to do this book on Japanese consensus building, and
Mhm.
Jack pulled me aside and he says, "John, do you really think that you can do a full book on Japanese consensus building?" And that just made me think. And so over the next couple years, I thought about a lot of different things, but that first uh, activity with Jack brought me into his success principles. So he has the
Mhm.
success principles, and I ended up uh, going through his program and becoming a certified trainer for that methodology. And
Mhm.
so that got me thinking in regards to how personal development is very, very much at play.
Mhm.
So as I was working with a number of different things and trying to figure out what I was going to be doing next, as I was going to be leaving the Cutter Foundation, um,
Mhm.
I decided, well, I'll go into being a coach. And then from that period on, I started working with a number of different coaches. And
Mhm.
um, what I found was that um, people were really intrigued by my story. You've given me a little bit of background of me, but by the time I was 22, I had traveled to 19 countries,
Oh.
all 50 states, and 8 provinces and territories in Canada. And
Wow.
that background, along with the fact that I was grew up in this household where we always had somebody new at the dinner table, culture became a very, very important part of my life, and
Mhm.
the differences of people was very important. And um, the one other aspect was that I grew up in the theater, and
Mhm.
when I was 9 years old, I had this intuitive moment where I felt like I was supposed to go and try out for this play, The Sound of Music. And
Mhm.
my parents were very surprised by this announcement. And these trials were like a month away, and they were just saying, "Oh, patting me on the head saying, John, that's really cute, but you're um, never sang in front of anybody before, and you don't even talk to anybody. So how can you get on stage to do this? So they were worried that I would get hurt. And ultimately, 2 days before this, because they weren't listening to me at dinner table and in the car ride to the school and stuff, every day as I was saying, I need to go to this thing. I just said, well, if you're not going to take me, I'm going to take the bus. So of course they took me, and um, and it was I got on stage in front of a couple hundred people. Um, I told the accompanist that I was going to sing the song Edelweiss, and then out became this big voice, and so that changed things for me. Well, theater was very interesting in regards to how it showed community and showed how leadership really develops. Where before I thought that the theater movies, the stage, it was all the big names on the marquee. And
Mhm.
when I got into the theater, I realized that everybody is a piece of that puzzle, and that
Mhm.
without everybody doing their part, you can't go very far. And so that became a very institutional part of my activity. But um, what what I was realizing as I was doing my coaching and trying to get my coaching business off the ground, um,
Mhm.
and this is after I came back from Doha, which was the in August of 2022. And
Mhm.
then I continued working for the Cutter Foundation for another year and a half, and so until the end of 2023. And um, and so I was working for them half time, and I was starting my coaching business the other half time, and I was doing writing and things like that. Um, and but I was finding that I was having a hard time understanding who I was. And so I went with coach after coach after coach, and I met a coach which was very different from my other coaches. His name
Mhm.
was Sajad, um, and and he had a boot camp, and it was a 6 week boot camp where we worked for 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, and he had these SOPs, standard operating procedures, that we
Yeah.
had to learn. And one of the things was we had to learn a pitch. And so I wrote this pitch, and he thought the pitch was like really well written, and
Okay.
I was having a difficult time memorizing this. And and I was telling him that I couldn't understand why I couldn't memorize this. And it
Mhm.
was like 4 weeks into this program, and I was lost, and I was just having a real tough time. And I had a dream one night, and this is where the whole breakthrough came through, started to come through, and that was
Mhm.
that it took me back in time to when I was two and a half, when I had a severe beating by my father. And at, 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 at 5, my father was an orthopedic surgeon, and um, I had, uh, been born with pigeon toed. So my toes went inward. And so
Mhm.
he was trying to fix that. And so at night he made this brace out of this plywood and these boots that were screwed onto this plywood, and it would push my feet out, which would push my knees out, and it really hurt. But the other thing was is that um, not only did that hurt, but my mother was mad about this, not because it was hurting me, but because it was tearing the sheets. And so all of a sudden, I was in between my two parents, and that
Mhm.
became a constant, where my father was very demanding and domineering. He was a great man. Okay. I love him and everything. And I had a lot of admiration for him, but I was scared of him. And,
Mhm.
and then he didn't like the fact that my mother, who had some back problems, that she was complaining about these back problems, but that she also had depression. And so I felt like I had to fill in for my mother, um,
Mhm.
in duties. And so I had four other siblings, and I was cooking and cleaning and doing the laundry and doing making the lunches in the morning before school and such, just so my mother wouldn't get in trouble. And so this is where the people pleaser and the perfectionism started to come into play.
Mm.
Well, one other thing that came in this dream of mine was remembering back to a time when I was sexually abused as a child, and this had to do with the theater, and um, and it was a person who had really groomed me, and had groomed others, and of course that hurt, but I locked that up inside completely because I didn't tell my parents anything because I didn't want to get in trouble because I thought that they would take me out of doing the theater and such. Well, when I told Sajad these stories, he says, "Oh, well, I can see where we need to have some breakthroughs and such." And he goes, "But because of the sexual abuse, you need to go see a therapist." So I went to see a therapist, and
Okay.
the therapist went through a bunch of these different aspects, and that got me to clarify certain things. And then working with others, I've been able to do step by step. And I'll stop it right there because it's been quite lengthy, and I apologize for that. But I think
No, no.
to have this background to understand, you know, how deep some things in our past really penetrate us, and that it's really important that we pull them out one by one and understand how we deal with them.
Yeah, that's a very important point you mentioned, and John, I mean, uh, mm, it's okay if it's long, because every one of us have such unique journeys. It can be like a year when there are multiple events, life-changing events happening, or it can be like 10, 20 long years when so many different highs and lows are there. So I really appreciate and applaud the fact that you shared the highs and the lows and some of the most personal, um, you know, though sometimes horrible, um, but really genuine, authentic experiences. And it really started on a positive note, but then now when you recollect all these experiences, John, especially during your therapy, um, what were the most obvious realizations that you have had? One that you mentioned is, of course, the people pleasing and the perfectionism that kind of shaped from your childhood, kind of responsibilities that you had to tend to because of your mother's health and her mental health aspects as well. But were there any other realizations, like hidden trauma, suppressed trauma, and because of which you were just trying to engage yourself in different roles and responsibilities and activities in your adulthood?
So what so I have 6 children myself, and
Okay.
um I have a very good relationship with them,
Okay.
especially now, but we've lived around the world and traveled around the world together. And so that aspect has been very interesting and good for them and everything. But I realize now that I look back, having not broken through some of that trauma, because I'm 61 years old now, and and you know, being in my late 50s and my early 60s, going through this type of um, restructuring of who is John Taylor McEntire has
Mhm.
been very substantially um, changing to me. And so I hid all this stuff. And because I hid this stuff, I was never very open. I was always the one who was willing to help somebody out, to jump in and do something, to give somebody a good comment, to buoy somebody up. But um, I was not really being completely authentic. And I think that when Jack and I wrote the book, The Keys to Authenticity, that
Mhm.
was one of that was leading up to my breakthrough. But I realize now that even when I wrote that book, which was truthful and everything, I think that I would probably approach that book in a little bit different way now, maybe somewhat more meaningful, than the way that I approached it, which was fine in a business context, but in a context where we're trying to become a better person, trying to become a more whole person is
Mhm.
is really it's different than just working in the workplace. It's really how do you approach life. So as I've been working with all these different coaching programs and coaching groups and meeting
Mhm.
lots of different friends and especially in the Jack Canfield world where I was one of the methodology trainers and I would help him on stage and with his programs, 5
Mhm.
programs, and so I got to know a lot of different people. And before I had my breakthrough, uh I was, people admired me.
Mhm.
They thought, things were really great and everything, but they would say, "It just feels like you're hiding something." And, when in, June, Jack had his final, Breakthrough to Success program, that
Mhm.
he's doing. He's retired now. And so I was able to, be one of the members of his final team. And, when I met some of my friends who I've been with before, and they see me now, and it's just like, "John, you're just, like, different. You're on fire. You're alive. This is what we were thinking was in there, but we just didn't see it." And
Mhm.
and so it's been very freeing to be able to get to know myself better because I've been able to attack those things that are in my past and really dig deeply into them. And
Mhm.
I would say that working with the therapist was great. It helped
Mhm.
me go through a lot of different things, but I found that after several months, maybe 4 months, 5 months, um, we were just kind of rehashing the same things over and over again. And so I felt that that was not necessarily the most healthy thing to do because I wanted to get out of that. And from the introduction of somebody else, I met Forbes Riley, who is a coach who teaches people how to pitch and how to sell things. And she's a celebrity in her own right. And she had been a child actor, and so there was a lot of similarities. And she has a thing that she does. It's called breakthrough, and I
Mhm.
was able to do 2 breakthroughs. One was breaking through the trauma that I had with my father and the
Mhm.
trauma that I had with my mother. And it was amazing how different I felt once I had gone through these breakthroughs where all of a sudden, I had this angst and I was angry at my parents, for different things, how could you let me do this and everything. And
Mhm.
having gone through that, I realized that, just like me, I'm an imperfect father. And nobody gave me an instruction manual to raise my children. My parents didn't have an instruction manual to raise me, who was a very different child. And and so I have nothing but love for them and recognize that they raised me the best way that they could. And just recently, in the last couple months, I've had another uh, chance to work with another person called Willpower Harris, and he helped me go through a transformation from one state to another, um, and it's very interesting bringing your vibrations up to a different level has really helped me out. But each one of these has done something to raise my vibrations, and it's a step-by-step process. So, um, I would say that it really is a journey, and as we go on this journey, we need to try to enjoy what we're learning about ourselves, because what we're learning about ourselves and our background is helping us understand what's holding us back and what can propel us forward. And when we take care of those things that are holding us back, we're able to move forward much more positively.
I Absolutely agree with you. And I also strongly believe that age is no bar. You can learn about yourself at age of 20 or 30 or 40 or 60, whatever it is. But I think it's there's such a difference, uh, before the breakthroughs that you have had. I believe that the confidence in what you were doing, you were achieving, it was more for others. But right now, it's more about, how you are showing up. And that confidence is exuding in the way you are sharing your journey, your story with all of us. That's what I can feel. I may not be right, but that's what I feel.
You're more right than you actually know about. Um, so, uh,
Okay.
even a year ago, I would not have been able to tell most of these stories, and you would have had a lot of ums and ahs and a lot of hesitation in telling the stories. One of the things when I was growing up, my father had told me, "You've had a very interesting, blessed life. Um, don't flaunt it. You are not to tell anybody about it. You don't want to be the person that's in a room, in a party, that's one-upping anybody else. Um,
Mm,
you don't need to show that." So that was also part of what made it that I wasn't assertive. And you had mentioned that, at 20 or 30 or 40 or 50, we can have these breakthroughs. I did have another breakthrough when I was at the University of Illinois. I had been there for about 10 years, and I was feeling like I'm not climbing up the ladder. And
mhm,
I was wondering why. And I had a friend of mine who ended up having to work with a professional coach because he
mhm,
had some problems that he needed to work on. And so I
mhm,
went to my boss and I said, "So does somebody have to have problems to be able to work with a coach here?" And she says,
mhm.
"Oh, no, if you'd like to work with a coach, that would be fine." And she says, "We'll find you one." I said, "Well, you don't need to look far because I like the same one that he has." And
Yeah.
because I had been paying attention and talking to him every day as he came back from these coaching sessions. And so for about a year, I was in with this coach, and within 2.5 years, I was a different person then. But
Mm,
this was working on assertiveness and how do I, you know, get away from being just the people pleaser, but trying to um, help myself understand where my value was and
mm,
everything. So it's a step by step process, and each one of these different situations has helped me get to that point. And um, I would say that it depends on where we're at in our life, whether we're going to be accepting of such newfound wisdom, or this teaching from somebody else, listening to the master and absorbing.
yeah.
Up to us to be able to do that, but we're not always in that state of mind or the ability to do that.
Mm. And since you bring in the state of mind in here, I would like to bring in the element of mindfulness. So, we often talk more in the terms of wellness about mindfulness, that it's like being in the present, doing a lot of breath work, meditation. It can be through creative ways as well. Um, how would you define mindfulness? From all these experiences, the breakthroughs, um, the opportunities you have had, to connect, to explore with so many great thinkers or creators out there.
So, having grown up with an orthopedic surgeon father,
Mhm.
he's a very, very bright man. And, it takes 14 years to go through medical school to get an orthopedics degree. And, um, and so with him being this doctor, everything was cut and dry for him. You're sick, you have a break, we got to fix the break. Um,
Mhm.
it didn't really go into the emotional side of things, which was what I felt was missing, nor did it was Western medicine, and it didn't bring in the Eastern medicine. So it wasn't until I had actually spent time in Japan, and my wife is Japanese, that
Mhm.
I had uh, found that Eastern medicine was very helpful. So acupuncture, especially for me, was helpful. But that helped me understand that getting to the topic of mindfulness, that mindfulness is really, really important. And in our Western culture, we don't pay enough attention to that as we're growing up, especially the youth nowadays, with the advent of cell phones and constantly being on social media, and
Mhm.
the attention span gets shorter and shorter all the time. I think it's even more important that people understand that that short attention span is not helping them in the long run. So when when I found at first I felt that meditation was a little bit, you know, um, just woo woo and such, and it's partly because of how I grew up. Things were cut and dry, and as I have come to understand meditation and breath work and taking that time for ourselves and being able to go through breakthroughs that had relationship to um, meditating. Um, that's where I've understood that mindfulness really, really comes into play. And when we're not mindful, we end up covering up mistakes or covering up trauma in our past. We end up
Mhm.
putting these layers over things that really should be helping us resonate with the world more, but we've made them dull. We've made them less. We don't want to show them. We're embarrassed about them, or for some reason we've locked them inside, and we want to make sure that they don't come out. So mindfulness has helped me over time, and I'm still not perfect on it, but over time I've learned that when I do um, spend time with my gratitude journal daily, when I do spend time in meditation and prayer, when I put the time into those things, I realize that my day actually goes much better, and that I am much more whole and holistically thinking than when I am just set on a task just to get that task done. When I do have a task, like putting together a speech, or putting together a video for social media and everything, if the times that I have am mindful about it, and the times where I'm just kind of in rote mode, just doing the actions, the quality that comes out is vastly different.
That is true. That is true. I feel that. And I absolutely second that. Ah, John, I know there's a time constraint because I could go on and on. I think our listeners would love to know the entire journey here, but of course, they would love to get hold to your book, and they would love to connect with you. So, what would be the best way for that?
So there's two ways. One would be mutualprosperity.com is my company. And then where I'm most active is on John Taylor McEntire at LinkedIn. And so if you put in that name, John Taylor McEntire, it's Mcentire is the last name. You'll be able to find me, and you'll be able to understand more of my philosophy and the way that I deal with business leaders who are changing positions from one job to they got promoted to a senior vice president or executive vice president, and they go through the same thing that that have gone through in regards to losing yourself, trying to feeling imposter syndrome, and trying to figure out how you work with this new team who's really leery about working with you, and how do you make them sync together. So sync is SYNC, synchronize yourself naturally within your community. And that book will be my new book will be coming out in October.
Awesome. That's really great. And congratulations in advance, John, for your book and all the best. And I'll make sure to have all the details in the show notes for our listeners.
Thank you so much. And I hope I didn't talk too much.
I am really grateful that you shared this, John. I'm really, really grateful. And um, I, I, I genuinely believe that I think the purpose of the platform is actually served when people, irrespective of circumstances or any kind of you know situations, they feel free to share not only the highs but the lows of their journeys. So I hugely appreciate that you gave me this opportunity to host the platform for you, and I'm really thankful for opening up, um, and showing us also that how mindfulness, it isn't just about being quiet or just those quiet moments on a cushion, but it's about how we lead, how we connect, and how we heal. So thank you so much.
Thank you again.
So to all the listeners, I hope John's story resonated with you. It definitely did with me. Be sure to check out his book, The Keys to Authenticity, and also keep an eye out on his upcoming release, Sync to the Beat of Success. Just refer to the show notes along with this episode. And also, thank you for joining us on the mindful journey. Please share this episode with a friend who needs a reminder that healing and leadership can coexist. Until next time, keep breathing, keep noticing, and keep showing up for your own mindful journey. Thank you.